Hey there. Welcome to Lead Fearlessly, Strategies of Confident Women Leaders, the podcast that will empower you to unleash your inner strength and embrace leadership with confidence. I'm your host, Katie Winchenbach, and I'm excited to have you join us as we dive into the experiences of extraordinary women who've shattered glass ceilings and redefined success on their own terms. Get ready to be motivated, challenged, and equipped with the tools and strategies to lead fearlessly in your own life and career. I am so thrilled that we are joined today by Tiffany Odutoye. Tiffany is an absolute powerhouse. She is founder, CEO, and Chief Visionary Officer of Virtual Partner, and she's had an amazing career working at many different companies prior to branching out on her own. Tiffany, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Katie, for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. And it's an honor to be among people, your listeners, and to be here with you who does so much to honor the journey of women. So thank you.
Thank you. And to kick this off, I'm going to have you briefly describe your journey and how you got to where you are now.
Okay. Thank you so much for asking. So my journey isn't the traditional one. I think that most leaders, they either start at a very early age, they go to college, they get formalized education, they start in the workplace, they have mentors and sponsors, and they have sort of this upward trajectory to their leadership path. Mine was very different. For me, Katie, my journey to becoming an entrepreneur or a CEO or getting to a key leader suite, a key leader spot, that didn't really start until I was like 47. So I did not get my first vice president job in corporate till age 47. However, my journey to leadership started at a very early age, taking twists and turns and pivots, right, along the way. And I'm grateful that I sort of had the twists and turns because it enabled me to gain skills, knowledge, ability, establish relationships that enable me to support other women on their journey. So that's like my story in a nutshell. But I'll tell you one thing that really inspired me, Katie, at a very early age. The most amazing mentor in my life was my mother. She was the first female engineer for what is now known as Verizon. She was a woman of color in the 60s and in the 70s. And at that time, she was told no very frequently. She didn't have formalized education similar to my early journey. And they told her if she passed the engineer's exam that she could have the title. And so she, fearlessly went against and braved against all of the no's. She was the first woman to pass, and she became an engineer, laying down lots of the telecom tracks in the Philadelphia area. So very proud of her. And she always told me, Katie, I could do whatever I wanted. And she supported me from a very early age to do whatever I wanted in terms of my professional growth and development. And I have her voice in my head often when I take on those big, hairy, audacious goals, like the one that I have now in my own business. When I take that on, Katie, I hear my mother in the back. I see her resilience, and it reminds me that we don't necessarily have to have a linear path to growth. We just have to have a path, and we have to have a focus. And so that's where I am right now. I hope that helps explain a little about my journey.
It does. And I really love that you mentioned resilience and the fact that, you didn't get into that higher level until a little bit later, because I think a lot of times as women, we put pressure on ourselves to do everything right now. And keep moving at a rapid pace. So tell me a little bit about what that was like for you and how, as you were working towards that, vice president C-suite goal, how did you continue to build the confidence in yourself and keep your resilience to move forward for that position?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, it started with having an not irresistible, but having a vision, something that was really important to me, and finding my voice. And I'll never forget, I had decided early on that I was going to get my degree. And so I started down the path of getting my degree in education. But I quickly realized like I wasn't going to be a school teacher, but I needed some formalized training in order to put a stake in the sand in the workplace. And so that's what I did. And I began working with a global executive. And one of the things he said to me, this is why it's important for you to surround yourself with several types of leaders in the workplace, not just your peers, right? So you have to be able to manage across organizations, up organizations, and down, right? So you never look down on anyone, but you always are looking across and you're looking around you. So anyway, this key leader says to me, Tiffany, when do you want more for yourself? He says, you are my anchor, my sounding board, and you help me make most major decisions for this multi-billion-dollar corporation, right? So you help me make decisions. When am I going to write, and when do you want the offer letter written for you for the multiple six figures that you help us design for these C-suite leaders we're attracting to our organization? I was in executive recruitment and diversity, equity, and inclusion in this organization. And we had just started those two departments. And that was a pivotal moment, Katie, where I had to stop and think about the value I was bringing to the organization and separate that from the job title. That was the first movement in this direction. So I had now a vision, and that vision was what my value was, and I needed to quantify that. And it wasn't many months after that conversation, Katie, that I left and I started Virtual Partner in 2007. And that's where the name came from. I recognized that I had this incredible value to partner with senior executives and be the sounding board and be a compass for them and helping them to accomplish their big, hairy, audacious goals. So that was number one, was surrounding myself with the right people, really listening to that inner voice and figuring out what my value was, and then committing to building a brand, a personal brand and a business brand around that. And that's when I became an entrepreneur. So my path, like I told you, had twists and turns, Katie. And the first twist and turn was to leave corporate and become an entrepreneur. I gave myself my CEO title. I didn't wait for someone else to give it to me. And what comes along with that, when you become an entrepreneur, and you become a CEO, you need to have that executive presence. You need to figure out what that looks like. You're moving in different circles. There's a whole speak to that. There's a whole business brand to that. And then of course, no matter what it is, the product or service that you are taking to your customers, there's the internal operational piece of running your business like a boss. And so that was the pivot for me that helped me, I think, be prepared for the VP role in corporate, right? So the entrepreneurial journey was the way that I used. That was my bridge that I crossed to a higher level in corporate.
And thinking about that idea of you are the CEO and you have to have that mindset and you need to own really not, whether it's your own business or it's just your career. How did you get into that mindset of taking charge and going out on your own?
It's important, I think. They say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I believe that for me, and looking back on my journey, I started making a list of CEOs that I admired. I started watching women and listening to them that were doing what I wanted to do. And I also talked to a lot of people. Like I had so many conversations with executives. And I watched the executives that I supported. Remember, I was supporting the C-suite in corporate. before I left out on my own. So I already worked with boards of directors. I worked with executives. I wrote for executives. I've recruited executives. So I had a pretty good idea, a bird's eye view of what the world was like from an executive's perspective or from that lens. So I think it's important, if this is your first time out on your own as a CEO and you're being your boss, yes, you write your own ticket, but you also need to watch the world around you. See what it is that makes other bosses, other women that you admire successful. Reading those great books from like Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, and then Atlas of the Heart and all of these other books. Looking and watching. I loved Oprah. She was like my touchstone. She was like a boss girl. And so I always watched, how she built her brand, how she interacted with other people, how she moved, the kind of people she had in her space. I think it's important to be able to do that, to watch the world around you, make a list of the people you admire, what it is about them, what makes them successful, what pieces you're going to adopt for yourself, and then move forward.
And as you were watching these leaders and as you started making note of what it was about them that stood out to you and then implementing those things, what did you find were the skills or strategies that were most important for you in becoming a strong leader?
It's wonderful for women to talk about some of the basic things like confidence and presence. And, we talk about imposter syndrome and being able to, be in the same room with men. Well, one of the things that I admire is the ability for some of these women. They have incredible vision. They know what risks to take. They are, in terms of their entry into the marketplace, they're really in tune to their own inner voice. And there's this piece of authenticity or a layer of authenticity about them, and they're unapologetic about who they are. And I think those are some of the qualities that I believe are important, because let's just admit this, when you're stepping out on your own, Katie, it can be very scary. Right? You have a lot of voices in your head about what success and failure looks like. When you have a clear vision and you're crystal clear about what success looks like for you, whether it's leaving a legacy, whether it's some sort of dollar amount or customer segment or a change or impact you want to make in a marketplace, you have to have a laser focus on that. You need to be crystal clear. You need the solid business case, right? So it's not just about, the warm and fuzzy pieces, but it's making sure that you can quantify the value you're taking to the marketplace, as you've done your market research, that you have a solid plan, you can articulate your plan, that you're crystal clear about your vision, that you stay on mission, and that you're, then you also pay it forward, right? You're adding value at every touch point in the community. I think those are some really important things in terms of leading that's important. And then the last piece that was really important to me, and that as I watched others, was the piece around humanity. And so it was really important for me to make sure that I led and that I left people's lives better than I found them. It was important. It is and was important to me that the people that I led, not just admired me, but that I was the kind of person that they also would want to be like, or have lead them or mentor them. So that was really important for me, that I had to stay true to my own values as an individual, as I was leading whatever initiative it was that I was going to be leading, or whatever change it was that I was going to be making. But again, it was about clear vision, clear mission, being authentic, staying true to my values, and making sure that people were always of primary importance.
It's so clear from this conversation with you that you are very comfortable with who you are as a leader and how you show up when you are leading people and when you're interacting with people. How did you develop that authentic leadership style? And for women who may be struggling with imposter syndrome or wondering if they can really bring their authentic self to leadership, what advice would you offer?
For me personally, let me answer the first part of the question, Katie, and that is, how do I do it? And how did I get to this place? And it goes back to, for me, I know people don't like to mix their their views around spirituality and their moral compass and fiber with work. But we are human beings, and that is very much a part of most of our existence. Even if we choose not to have a spiritual side, that's a spiritual choice, right? So for me, a lot of my own personal values, whether you have them written in a book and they put some sort of professional word to it, kindness is kindness and it's a spiritual value, right? Compassion, no matter what you call it, is a spiritual value. So I very much have taken the time to develop a spiritual side, and I take time to feed that part of me. It is what makes me who I am, and how I show up with people, and why people matter so much to me. So for me, spirituality, whatever form that shows up in your life, to me is a side of us as human beings that must be nurtured and fed. And I think it comes out in the way that we lead other people. For example, a lack of kindness. It's very hard to say you're spiritual and you're not kind, right? So for me, I think it's important that we look at ourselves as whole beings, right? There's not the being that we bring to work and that we forget who we are when we come to work. And there's not the being that we are at home and we forget how we behaved when we were at work. I think that we are whole beings, and and while we don't show everything to everybody who we are, we need to be that person all the time. And I think it's important to sort of hone in and sit still with yourself and really be real with the parts of us that need to be developed, and the parts of us that are strong, and, really taking time to meditate and focus and grow those sides. So for me, I read books. I have books on the shelf. If my husband tells me, for example, many years ago, like, stop making excuses, Tiff, you need to own this. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Do I have a problem with accountability here? Right. So, listening to what people are telling you about yourselves. I remember very early on in my 20s, it's like, okay, accountability was something. So those are, you'll see on my shelf, that was a side of me that needed to be developed, right? And what does that look like and how does it show up? That has made me a better leader, both in holding myself and others accountable and being able to own my peace, both in success and failures.
Talking a little bit about failures. It's something I think we tend to not like to highlight, understandably, but it's such an important part in everyone's career, and how you bounce back from failure and what you learn from failures really does inform how you are as a leader and your career path. Can you tell us a little bit maybe about a specific failure you've experienced that really taught you something, or more generally kind of how you've reframed failures into positives?
Yeah, I don't believe that failure and success live in separate quarters. I think that they live together. I think it's impossible to be successful without first having tried something that was not successful. So, and I just believe that you need to fail fast. I believe that is, now that I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm an adjunct professor for James Madison University, for Ivy Tech Community College. And I facilitate helping leaders of transformation become certified practitioners. And part of that curriculum, when I build in the leadership piece, which, that triangle that they have is the technical piece, the soft skills, and then this leadership piece. part of that is around being able to quickly, it's about being agile, being able to fail fast and fail forward. And that, I think, is where you see success and failure come together. When you can put a plan together, pull the trigger, create a minimal viable product, and either just let the thing go, right? And then take the lessons learned and make that better. I'll give you a quick, for instance, I'll never forget, I was doing there used to be these startup weekends. I don't know if you've ever heard them, but in Tech Columbus, when I first started my business, I was very much a part of the tech scene. Columbus back in, 2000, the late 2000s was the number one up and coming tech city in America. And I wanted to be one of the women that created the first tech conference for women by women in the region, which I successfully did. But prior to doing that, I went to Startup Weekend because I was trying to get into the tech scene, trying to find my voice. I was doing this leadership piece and working with leaders, but I realized that a lot of my customers needed to embrace digital technology. And I was trying to find a way to bridge the gap between like that consulting piece and the digital world. So I go to Startup Weekend. I don't know what I'm doing there. Got all these tech people. I'm not really a coder. I'm not really a marketer. I'm not really I'm a consultant. I'm an idea. I got ideas. And so I'm at Tech Columbus. I'm at the Startup Weekend, and they put me on a team. And when you do Startup Weekend, it moves at a scary fast pace. Everybody, they're spitballing ideas. You bring your best ideas. They get picked, voted on, vetted on, picked. And then you get put in a team and they give you like coders, marketers, all kind of people. And you go in a room and you stay in a room for the weekend until you come out within 24, 48 hours with a product that you can take to market. And I had this amazing idea. My idea got picked. Of all these people in the room, my idea got picked. But Katie, there's this connected piece. Like when you have a great idea and you have a team develop your idea, you gotta like do something with it. So I had a really great idea. People then come at the end and they want to fund your idea. And what I will say about that idea never left the page, Katie, and that was failure to me, right? You have a great idea. You have people who have developed it. We created a minimal viable product, but we never took it to market. And now, 15 years later, I see all of these companies with the idea that I had like 15 years ago that a small group of people in a room created, and we did nothing with it. And I think I guess the piece of the story I'm telling about failure is sometimes our inability to act is the distance between success and failure. Our inability to act. I was so afraid. I was onto something really amazing. We created something amazing, but I had fear, and it held me back from being successful for that particular endeavor. And that's the lesson learned. Sometimes you must take the bull by the horn, and you must move at a very quick pace to act. And when people show up, like we had funders, they want to move this forward. You can't be slow to act. It's not next week or 2 weeks from now. It's tomorrow. It's today. It's in 10 minutes. Let's have coffee. Let's move it forward. So now I have a bias to action. That is now very much a part of my leadership style. I learned from that from 15, 20 years ago. And when I look back, there's still this sort of pain when I see other technology hitting the market. What I designed 15 years ago. But it's a reminder that failure and success, they don't live apart from each other. There's a distance between the two, and usually it's our bias to action.
I really love that focus on the bias to action. And I love that you acknowledged that there's that fear there, because I think a lot of times we feel guilty that we're afraid, or we try to get rid of the fear. But I think it's important, as you've mentioned, that you can be afraid and you can acknowledge that there's fear there, but you have to have that bias towards action where you do something anyways.
And I've taken that and harnessed that now in my business. So this year, in 2024, the beginning of 2024, I woke up one morning. Actually, I didn't. I woke up one morning and I'm laying on the side of the bed. I was getting over being sick. Last year, 2023, I had like 3 surgeries and I was recovering. So I'm at the tail end of recovery. My husband comes into the room and he looks at me and he was like, "Are you done yet?" And that morning I had woken up and I asked myself the same question. And I had been noodling in my head something that I wanted to do that almost a year prior, I had one of those napkin ideas. So I had a bar napkin idea and I woke up that morning and I said to myself, when are you going to act? Like, what are you going to do about this? And so when my husband comes in and he was like, "Are you done yet? Like, are you done recovering? Are you done like licking your wounds? You're all recovered. It's time for you to like stop watching K-drama and get out and do something. Are you going to get a job? Are you going to become an executive again? Are you going to become what are you going to do? Like, and so I said, I think, I've been thinking about this and I'm ready to, start Virtual Partner back again. I don't think that I'm going to go back to corporate. I believe that I have a vision and a legacy that it's time for me to create. And I want to know if I have your support to do it. And he says, absolutely. And so this year, when I started Virtual Partner at the beginning of the year, I took the bull by the horn. I was like, you know what? I know exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to create this rebrand Virtual Partner to be a brand that elevates leaders, empowers teams, transforms organization, and brings clarity to complexity in an effort to foster innovation. And I really wanted to crystallize the path for women moving forward, to shorten the leadership runway for women to less than 10 years from the front door to the top floor. And my story about becoming an executive at age 47 was the catalyst to do that. I wanted to know that women cross bridges like me. Did they climb did they climb stairs like most people, or did someone send the elevator down? It doesn't make a difference how we get there. And then for this next generation, Katie, what do they need? Because 47, nobody's waiting to 47 to become a vice president anymore. No, it's not that. It's too long. And so that in 2024 in January, when I got up out of bed, I was like, you know what? I want to know how she rises. And Virtual Partner is going to be the catalyst to do that. And I have worked feverishly all year to be able to bring this vision to birth. And so this is this bias to action that I learned from like 15, 20 years ago. Like once you get really, really clear about your purpose and about your vision, and something inside of you speaks, now you must have this bias to action. You have to make it happen. And so that's how I've been able to turn that around from a business perspective. And I think inside the workplace, it's the same thing. If you now are leading a team where the company has a vision or a mission, I think it's critically important that everything you do is aligned to that, but that you have a bias to action. You're kicking butt doing it, right? Bringing people to the table, unifying them around the organization's vision. And I think as women, that is where our voice becomes very strong, when we can get teams behind the organization's vision and we can help them take the right risk and we chart the path forward, right? We become that wind under the sail that keeps the team moving forward. I think that is when women are able to really rise in the workplace.
I love that you're thinking about, with Virtual Partner, how we help accelerate women. And from that lens, what are some changes you hope to see for women in leadership roles in the next few years?
The number one change that I'd like to see, I believe we have a lot of women. I don't think the problem is that there are women in the workplace. I think there are a lot of women in the workplace. I think the challenge is that I'd like to see is that when we are thrust into leadership or we try to step into leadership, we're not prepared as we should be. I also believe that as organizations are plotting out their future in terms of succession planning, that we don't necessarily have the framework to train operational or functional leaders to groom the next generation of leaders so that they're ready to take the helm. I think that's a fundamental shift that I'd like to see change. Here's what I mean by that. One of my clients, I facilitate succession planning for county executives here in Maryland. And most of them don't know anything about succession planning. And even if they do know something about succession planning, they don't understand how to look at high potential talent and how to develop high potential talent, the difference between high performers and high potential, and how to close that gap. I think fundamentally that would be the number two thing I'd like to see change. So number one is, how do we shape them at the door? Number two is, how do we help functional leaders that are touching these people to understand the difference between high performance and high potential and how to close that gap? I think those are two fundamental pieces. I think there are plenty of women in the workplace. Many of them are at the middle, but all the women I'm talking to, when I ask them this question, did you feel prepared for the role you have today? All of them inevitably tell me no. Many of them tell me failure stories that helped them get to success. And so that is where the She Rises podcast, the She Rises global impact survey comes into play in the programming that we like to put together to help women begin to close that gap. So a lot of the work that we're doing behind the scenes is really to try to help close that gap. And we like to be able to use the data to really drive that change forward at the corporate level across organizations that have at least 100 employees or more, for women that are leading teams, or if they're recruiting women to their teams.
And you'd mentioned, as we were chatting earlier, some resources that you have through Virtual Partner that are really helpful for rising women leaders as they're looking to advance. Can you tell me a little bit more about those and how our listeners can take advantage?
Oh, yes. So we have two playbooks that we wrote specifically for women in the workplace. One's for emerging leaders and the other one's for seasoned leaders. So again, two playbooks. They are free for your listeners. We'll make sure you have QR codes you can embed in the show notes. You can get them on our website at virtualpartner.biz/she leads. Again, these are going to be two playbooks that you'll download. They're going to walk you through the skills and action items you need to have so that you have that bias for action and that you're making the impacts you need to make. And if you're already a seasoned people leader, these are a few reminder kinds of things that help to take you to the next level. They come with a 4-week set of email support that you get from myself and my team. So we're looking forward to all of them, your listeners, downloading those kits, working with them, forward them to people that you know. If you have new team members coming on board, this is a great resource you can provide for them as well.
That is great. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for offering that. It is a really incredible resource, and I'm so excited to have that for everyone listening to this podcast.
Yes, I'm really excited. We developed those. We realized that having playbooks for women, that was one of the things that I valued. A resource that I used to go to all the time, and I still do, is Gartner, and they always have playbooks. And I thought to myself, ooh, we need to have these for women. And so we started writing them for women in the workplace. And there will be more coming, but we started with these first two.
That is incredible. And to wrap up our conversation, I'll ask you to kind of look back on your journey and think about if there was one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self, what would that piece of advice be?
Get a coach. And this is what I mean. I had some rough edges, Katie, a lot of them. I'm not saying that I don't now, but they were like really, I needed a lot of chiseling when I was young because I didn't come from the environment that most people came from. Remember, I didn't get my master's degree till I was in my 40s. I didn't get my bachelor's till I was, in my 30s. And, I became an entrepreneur on my own and just had to learn a lot through reading and self-study and trial and error. And a coach, I hired an executive coach. And that's when I realized, wow, I should have had this early on in my career. Someone that would be at my side to really help me navigate some of the pitfalls of being an executive at an early age. I was a manager my first time being a people leader. I was 18 years old. What did I know about leading adults? Absolutely nothing. And, if I would have had a coach back then as a first time people leader, that would have helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls. So looking back to my younger self, that is the piece of advice. It's not buying Gucci shoes, a designer handbag, whatever it is your expenses are every month on superficial things. I would have told my younger self those things are not as important as having a guide from the side to help you navigate your career.
And I can second that, Tiffany, as someone who has recently started working with a coach. It really does make a huge impact. Having that third party there to provide some objective guidance really is a huge benefit that I think a lot of women overlook.
Yes. And I'm proud to say I wasn't trying to make a shameless pitch for myself, but I'm going to make one now. We we provide executive coaching, and I become a master coach with the Career Winner Circle. We're careerwinnercircle.com, or of course you can find us at virtualpartner.biz. But we provide, I don't do career coaching. I do executive coaching, and I facilitate teams. However, we have a team of career coaches that that are part of our team. This is what we do. My specialty again is helping emerging leaders and those that are already in leadership roles. But like I said, we do have this specialty, and I'm happy to have that network of people to be able to refer other women to. So if you're looking for that kind of support, please let me know. This is what we do.
Awesome. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time to share your story and all of these incredible insights.
Thank you very much for having me. I do appreciate that you took a moment to hear my story, some of it. And I hope that what I've shared, my journey can benefit women. And I would love to hear back from anybody that this resonated with.
If this resonated with you, I encourage you to reach out to Tiffany on LinkedIn. Her link is in the show notes. And you'll also find a link to download the playbooks that she mentioned. Thanks for tuning in to Lead Fearlessly, Strategies of Confident Women Leaders. If you've been inspired by today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a friend who could use a confidence boost. Remember to subscribe so you won't miss out when we drop our next season. And if you found our conversations valuable, please leave us a 5-star review. Your support helps us continue to amplify the voices of incredible women leaders and inspire more fearless female trailblazers.